Hi there, welcome back to my channel. I'm Melissa if you're new here, and if you're not, thank you for coming back to another video. I wanted to bring you some plants that I feel like are really low maintenance, easygoing plants that also look nice. They look more elegant or timeless, and I feel like overall they're just great additions to anyone's plant collection. I feel like they would do well in various growing conditions, lighting conditions. So if you don't own any of these plants, I highly recommend them. And the first one on the list is Anthurium pallidiflorum. I have two. I actually have one that's a little bit more narrow, which is right here. And I have another one that is a little bit more wide. So what I mean by wide versus narrow is the actual leaf size. The more narrow one is how it sounds, the leaf shape, and I guess the width of the leaf is more slim compared to the other one that is more wide. Sometimes I feel like Anthurium can be known to be finicky. They get crispy if you underwater them and they're not kept in like high humidity or a grow tent. But honestly, this plant doesn't need any of that. It does fine in ambient conditions. It gets some pretty low light, I would say. There's not a ton of light in this section of my home. I do have an east window here that gets morning sun and a few extra grow bulbs, but you can kind of see behind me, this is the actual, I don't have the overhead light on, but it is pretty dark in this area, so it does tolerate, you know, some lower lighting conditions. I feel like it's also very forgiving, so if you underwater slightly, it will show you. It's like a pothos in a way, you know, where the leaves curl a bit when you know you're late on watering and it's telling you like, hey, I'm thirsty. It'll do the same thing. The leaves will start to curl in, like concave in. And so that's a subtle sign that it wants water. But like I said, it always bounces back. It perks right back up. It doesn't get crispy on me. The leaves are just so long and beautiful. It's like a trailing plant, but it's not. It just has that look, and I feel like it's timeless, and they can get so long, so big, so beautiful. I feel like it can grow pretty quickly, especially during the warmer months of the year, but you're also not like rearranging it and having to propagate it and cut it back. But every time I walk by this area, I just look at those long, beautiful leaves, and it just makes me fall in love with this plant even more. I don't know how that's possible. It's definitely my top two of all the Anthuriums that I have. It's up there, so I could not live without this plant in my collection. Truly, it's just one of those staples that I feel like everybody has to own. Number two on our list is a Hoya, and that Hoya is Hoya polyneura. It's also known as a fishtail Hoya because the leaves are so unique. They look like a fishtail if you've never seen this Hoya before. This is the regular green form, and there's so many varieties of polyneura, which makes it fun and unique to collect if you are really into this Hoya. But I feel like the classic green one is always going to be like a tried and true favorite. And it truly is like a really easygoing Hoya. It doesn't need high humidity, it doesn't need a ton of water, and it doesn't need as much light as people think. I did recently move mine to this spot, so it's still adjusting. As you can see, it doesn't get a ton of light. And I also have an overhead light on, so it's cheating, but it's a lot darker than it appears in that spot. But so far it's doing well. It's put out some new growth, so I feel like it's really happy in that spot. And like I said before, it doesn't really require a lot. I could go weeks without watering that plant and it doesn't throw a fit. So it's just a really good Hoya to own and to branch into Hoya if you aren't a Hoya head and you don't like them. I feel like the polyneura will change your mind. So if you don't have it, I definitely recommend starting out with this one. But again, it's just, they're so beautiful when they get so big and full and luscious. And the leaves, they just make it look so effortless, the way that it trails and everything. So definitely a fuss-free plant for me and a staple. But the next plant, well actually the next plants are in here, and the one that's next on the list is one of my OG plants. I've had this plant since my early plant collecting days, I think since 2020. So it's going on, yeah, I've had this plant for about 5 years, the exact same plant. And it's crazy now just thinking about that, how old this plant is. But it's none other than Scindapsus, pictus, exotica. And I love the name too, exotica. It does look like an exotic plant. But for this one specifically, I love the bigger leaves, and the silver tones are just so beautiful on this plant. You can let it trail, which is very beautiful in how I have mine, or you can let it climb. And also a tip I have for trailing plants, so you want them long and beautiful, my tip is to cut them. And I know that sounds weird. Why would you cut them if you want them long and to trail long? But if you cut them, it actually makes the pot more full up top. I've done this several times. I've done it with this plant, with other like pothos. Cutting the vines will actually prompt new nodes to activate from nodes up top, and it just ends up making the pot more full looking. And it's a little hack I like to do if you don't necessarily want to propagate to add back in. I like trimming some vines back and you get a full look up top. Sometimes I'll get straggly vines where there's no leaves that grow, so I'll cut those away and it ends up sprouting like sometimes even 2 or 3 new growth points, which those will eventually grow and trail. So it really does make it look nice and bushy. It really doesn't require any care for me. My Scindapsus that I have in here, literally, I do nothing to them. I think I repotted that one 2 summers ago now, or last summer sometime. I don't really do anything other than water it once a week. And the only reason I do water it once a week is because it lives in a really warm environment in here. Honestly, if it wasn't in this room, I could get away with watering it a lot less frequently. And it's one of those plants too, like I was talking about with the pally, it will curl when it's really thirsty. So if you do underwater, you know, give it a good drench when it starts to curl. Like I usually will water it before then, but sometimes I'm a little bit late and it starts to curl a little bit, and so I'll give it a good drink and then it just plumps back up and it doesn't really get bothered by that. I feel like it's one I truly just never have to worry about, and it handles all kinds of different environments, lighting conditions. It doesn't need a lot, doesn't need a lot of humidity. It's just one of those like you water and go and sit and forget type of plants, and it looks beautiful. Next up on the list is a philodendron, and it has a very high-end look, but it's actually really easy for a variegated plant. I wanted to include this because one, I feel like it's just all around a really easygoing philodendron, and it doesn't revert easily. It doesn't require much care. It's not super fussy with light or growing conditions, and every new leaf is really exciting to see. And it's none other than Philodendron Caramel Marble. Mine has really grown a lot, but it has been so easy. I started this plant as a very young tissue culture. I mean, it was super tiny, and I've had this plant, I think, just over a year, and it's grown into a massive, gorgeous, beautiful plant. These used to be crazy expensive, and they've come down in price significantly, and I feel like the price tag doesn't even match the care that this plant requires. And I know variegated plants, you know, you're dealing with reversion and all white leaves, but I feel like this one is a good philodendron or a good variegated plant that you don't really have to worry about that on. Anything can happen still, but I feel like there's less of a chance. My favorite thing about this plant, other than the fact that it's beautiful, is the different tones of variegation that you get. New leaves come in this bright red orange color. I mean, look at that leaf. I love the shape of it. It's literally like a fire emoji. It's so pretty. And then it takes a while for the color to kind of burn in, and it turns into this creamy color here. I love the pattern on the leaves. I mean, look at that variegation. It is seriously one of my easiest plants. Again, there's nothing special that I do with it. I water it once a week just because it lives in this room, and it just grows so well. And I love that it doesn't get, you know, a lot of philodendron, they get huge and they climb really fast. They get these massive leaves. But the thing I love about this is that the spacing is so short. Like this is the node, like the stem, like that's how big it is right here in the time that I've had it. And mine is growing up because I do have a grow light up ahead. It's definitely more compact and it's not going to climb super fast. If anyone truly asks me to recommend a variegated plant that's easygoing, doesn't require much, this always comes to mind because you get the best of both worlds. You get beautiful variegation, not finicky, and it's beautiful. It's such like an elegant plant, and I have no other words for it other than it being just elegant and beautiful. I feel like if you had this plant sitting in the middle of your living space and you had someone over, this plant would definitely get talked about. They would be like, what is this plant? This is so beautiful. Like, I want this plant. It's just hands down one of my favorites in my collection because it's so easygoing and it's beautiful and timeless. And last but not least is another plant that lives in my plant room, but I brought it out here to show you it better. It's hard to really see the plants in my plant room with all the background of plants, if that makes any sense. I actually recently repotted it. So it was root bound, it needed to be repotted so bad, I kept putting it off. It was in a tiny self-watering pot, and then I upsized it to, I think it's a 9x8, yeah, a 9x8. It lives in pond, and I had a cocoa core pole that I felt like was taking away from the plant. I didn't like the look of the pole, so I switched it to a regular green garden stake, and I feel like now the plant stands out and you don't see that pole there. For this particular plant, I feel like it looks better, and I chose a darker pot versus a white pot because I feel like, again, I felt like the white pot was taking away from the plant, and I feel like now it looks more elegant and beautiful. So it is a Philodendron tortum, and again, I feel like it's one of those plants that just, it like looks funky. It's like a unique plant. It also reminds me of a palm tree, but it's cool that the way that it grows and the shape of it. I feel like it's one of those plants where if you were to walk by it, it would stop you in your tracks. Like, oh, what's this? The leaves are so cool looking. I love the shape of it. So again, I feel like that's the reason it made it to the list, is because it looks so unique and stylish, but also it's so easy. Such an easy philodendron. It requires nothing from me. Because this one's in pond, you know, I do fill up the reservoir with nutrients, but other than that, like, I've let it go dry so many times and it didn't even flinch. It's just such an easy philodendron, easy plant. I love the way the new leaves unfurl too. I should have gotten a photo of it when it was like just unfurling, but it does this like curly thing where the new leaves come in like this pink. It's like a pink color, and it almost looks like alien-esque in a way, the way that it actually unfurls. And you can see part of it is still twisted here in the middle, but it's so unique when a new leaf comes in, and then it fans out to these beautiful, cool leaves. Okay, I had to put it back down on the floor, but yeah, it's such a cool plant. I actually might graduate it to the patio out there in the springtime and let it grow out there because it does look like a palm tree. I love palm trees, so I might let it grow out there over spring and summer. It would be nice to clear up space in my plant room as well. But I love this plant, and I feel like it's so easy, so beautiful, so unique. I feel like it's a plant that I feel like anyone can grow, so I had to include that one on my list. So there you have it. Those are the 5 plants that are in my collection that I feel like are super low maintenance. They're fuss-free, but they're also just so beautiful and timeless and just classic plants. So I really hope you enjoyed my picks. Let me know if you have any plants down below that are fuss-free and low maintenance for you, but yet are beautiful staples in your collection. I would love to hear. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you again soon.